since you've been away.
DJ Payne 1.
Oh, come on.
I don't think that I'm coming back. Boy, I told you I'm done with that. You think you can do me so wrong? I'm not the one, no, I'm not the I don't think that I'm coming back. Boy, I told you I'm done with that. You think you can do me so wrong? I'm not the one, no, I'm not the I don't think that I'm coming back. Boy, I told you I'm done with that. You think you can do me so wrong? I'm not the one, no,
And it would be important if I realized that my mic was muted, so that's great. Well, with that, let me just make sure we're good on that front before we continue. And let me see. All right, there we go. So let me go ahead and restart this. Like I was saying before, I realized I was muted because sometimes StreamYards, be doing that sometimes. The main thing is that we have a game upcoming versus the Chicago Bears. This is an important game for the Cowboys. Every game is important, especially when you're playing in conference. And when we talk about playing in conference, it's important to stack up these wins as we get throughout the year. And I'll touch up on that more so later in the show. The other thing as well is we're a day away from game day. So you're going to look at the Cowboys taking on the Bears at the 425 slot. So that I believe is the America's Game of the Week slot from what I saw. And I could be wrong, but that's with what it looks like with the coverage of the game. It's going to be everywhere. Now, the other thing before we get fully into this is if you haven't done so already, please make sure to like the video. It doesn't take too long to do. And you can do this also on Twitter/X, helps in the algorithm. Also, make sure to hit the follow button or subscribe if you're new so you get more Cowboys content in your feed. Hit the notification bell if you're on YouTube. And if you want to support the channel further, you can become a channel member and all that other stuff. So with all the pleasantries out of the way, let's actually talk about what's going on throughout the week. So as we know, Cooper Beebe was dealing with an ankle injury after the game against the Giants. We just didn't know the severity of it. And now we know it's a high ankle sprain. He's going to be out for the next 6 to 8 weeks, which is a huge blow to the offensive line in terms of the cohesion of this young core. And while we do have Brock Hoffman coming in, who I think can be serviceable for you in this span of time, I do think that Cooper Beebe is a more talented player. And I believe that for the long term, him coming back later in the year is going to be helpful. As we know, the next 6 to 8 weeks, we have the following. We have, of course, the Bears tomorrow. We have Green Bay at home. We go on the road to the Jets, on the road to Carolina. We play Washington at home. And then we play the Broncos on the road. The other thing too is that would mean that his timetable could see him come back as soon as the Arizona Cardinals game on Monday Night Football. We do have a bye week in Week 10. So if I'm guessing when the return of Cooper Beebe will be, I'm hoping that it will be by the Monday night game versus the Raiders in Las Vegas, because that would put it at about 8 weeks after the injury. But things can happen, and I think that we need to just expect on the longer term, when are we expecting him to return? And so can the offensive line hold up without Cooper Beebe? I think it can. Brock Hoffman has shown that when he's been in there, he's been a capable center in this league. Is he an all-pro caliber center? Of course not. There have been moments where he's shown his weakness as a center, but I do think that you have enough as is to hold you down. If you do suffer another injury on the offensive line, that's when we're going to start having some concerns. And I do want to be very clear when it comes to Cooper Beebe. He has struggled this year for sure, and that could be just the sophomore slump. And that's something that I was hoping he could play through, because as you get more experience, as you play more, especially with him playing center, and making that shift, I believe, when he coming in from Kansas State playing as a guard, you're really hoping that he can continue to grow there. And sometimes these guys, especially offensive linemen, they don't hit it right away. Sometimes they take about a couple years to get going. And I think the most recent example of this would be a guy like Connor Williams, if you guys remember, number 52 from years ago, where it really took him until his third or fourth year with the Cowboys to really become a starting caliber guard where you can sit him there and he'll be A-okay. But I think we've talked enough about Cooper Beebe. I actually want to move forward and talk about this injury report for the Dallas Cowboys and the Chicago Bears, because we have an understanding of who's playing, who's not, and all that other stuff. So starting things off, Deron Bland is out. We were expecting that to be the case. We should be seeing him come back for the Packers game or the week after that, which that would be us playing against the Jets. The other thing is that Trevon Diggs, who was diagnosed with an illness, Tyler Guyton with a shoulder, and Kevontae Turpin, as we know, with the neck injury that ruled him out for the remainder of the game against the Giants. They carry no designation, and they are going to play this Sunday, which is huge for the Cowboys. The other thing I want to add is we should be seeing other guys return. We're talking about the DeMarvion Overshones of the world. We're talking about maybe Siobhan Ravel. There's rumors that he should be coming back soon, but I don't know. But the main thing is that getting these reinforcements are crucial for the Dallas Cowboys, especially defensively. Now, the other thing, too, is when we look at the Bears side of things, the Chicago Bears, Kyler Gordon is out. DeAndre Swift is questionable. TJ Edwards is out. Jalen Johnson is out. Jalen Jones is out, and DeMarco Jackson is questionable. So a lot of guys in that secondary for the Bears are out. So this is where if the Dallas Cowboys want to show what kind of offense they are, or more specifically, they can show some consistency. And being a high-powered offense, you should be able to take care of business against these Bears. Now, defensively for the Dallas Cowboys is where a lot of the eyes are going to be on this particular week. And the reason for that is you gave up 37 points to the New York Giants. And so the question becomes, okay, are the Giants that good offensively? And it was just a one-off against the Commanders. Or is it truly the fact that the Dallas Cowboys just have a really bad defense? Now, for Matt Eberflus, he's having a homecoming here. Used to coach for the Bears, and he knows Caleb Williams well. So I would hope that he can make sure to dial things up so that we can stop Caleb Williams. But that's what I really wanted to talk about in this next part, was the game plan for the Dallas Cowboys. What do they have to do? I personally believe with what we're seeing from Caleb Williams and this Chicago Bears offense, it is imperative that you get into a situation where Caleb Williams is rattled and he's doing things off script, which he's shown that while he can make some plays, he's not a terrible quarterback by any stretch of the imagination. I just don't think he's there yet as a NFL quarterback as he goes into year 2. So with Ben Johnson, of course, he's familiar with the Dallas Cowboys and what we've seen him do to this Cowboys defense last year. But I think things are a lot different. He is not a part of that Detroit Lions team. He's on a team that's still rebuilding and trying to build something. And defensively, I don't think he's going to have enough to really stack up to the Cowboys offense, because as we've seen, when the Cowboys get into a shootout, I do believe that they have the pieces necessary to really take care of business. But what I wanted to look at was really the history of the Dallas Cowboys and how they fared in Chicago. Now, the Cowboys have not won in Chicago since 2014, and that's a really long time. We're talking about 11 plus years since we've seen now, again, the Cowboys rarely go to Chicago. The last time they did go to Chicago was in 2019, and that was that Thursday night football game where they were down like 31-7 at one point, and they made Mitchell Trubisky look like Joe Montana. But a lot has changed since then. So the Cowboys have beaten the Bears under Dak Prescott, and that was back in 2022. So I do know that that's a whole different Bears team. And of course, that was with Justin Fields at quarterback, and it was at home. But I do want to be very clear that the Bears are another team that typically plays the Cowboys very tough. And that even goes no matter how bad the Bears are. This is a team where we've only won in Chicago like 3 times this century, and that's going back to the beginning of it. I think we played like 6 times. I'm going to look that up, and I apologize because I think it's important to have these conversations, primarily when we talk about the matchups of these two teams. It goes like how we struggle against the Cardinals and as well as the Broncos. And so when we're looking at the history here, so the last time like I mentioned before, we played in Chicago, it was a 31-24 loss for the Cowboys. And we have gone in the Dak Prescott era 2-1 against the Bears, the one loss coming in 2019. When we talk about how they fared throughout the entire century, in Chicago, by the way, I want to be very clear, in Chicago, the Dallas Cowboys have gone, I believe, 2-2. Sorry. So we had the one loss, or excuse me, we beat them in 2004, 2007, and then we also have 2014, but then we've lost in 2013. And so we're 3-2 so far in Chicago this particular century. So can the Cowboys avoid going to 500 there? I think so. But when we talk about the Bears again, they're a team that plays the Cowboys tough. So that's something that we need to keep them, regardless of who's on there. And that's not me trying to fearmonger or do anything like that. You have to understand that there are these historical situations where certain teams play each other differently. And like we've seen it with the Cowboys, with, like I said, the Broncos, the Cardinals, and at some point the Jets, because the Cowboys haven't beaten the Jets in New York in a long, long time, if I recall. So that's another thing that we'll talk about when we get there. But getting back to this game against the Bears, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, it's extremely important that you start stacking wins, and especially in your conference. The Dallas Cowboys currently are 1-1 in the conference, and this is when you start seeing teams really separate themselves. Okay, here's one team that's going in one direction. This is another team going in this direction. It's really when you start getting to weeks 3 through, I would say 7 or 8, is when you start seeing the contenders and the pretenders really show themselves. And for the Cowboys, are they a pretender? Are they a contender? To be honest with you, I don't know. Sometimes there are teams that fall in the middle, right? These teams that are either bad, but they're not bad enough to where they're like complete trash. Or are they a team like a 2-0 team, which the Cowboys are not, but there are 2-0 teams that are out there that maybe aren't as good as they are. Like I'm looking at the Colts, for example. I don't think the Colts are a good team. And when you look at the Bengals, they're 2-0 as well, but of course Joe Burrow is going to be out. So those are teams that, while they are 2-0, those will change given time. And then you look at other teams, like for example, I look at a team like the Bills, who are 3-0. I think they are a real team. I look at a team like the Packers. I think they are a real team. But things can change on a dime. That's just how the NFL is. So the big question becomes, if the Cowboys do win this game and go to 2-1, does it move my expectation? Does it change how I feel about the team? Not particularly. I think that for me, you should be able to go out there and beat the Bears. I had the Cowboys starting 2-1 when I looked back at things. And so if you do start 2-1, that's great. But what happens if you start 1-2? Well, depending on how you get there is really going to be how I approach this. Because if it's a situation to where, okay, the offense is doing its thing, but you're having a shootout against the Chicago Bears and you lose a shootout with the Chicago Bears, now we're going to have a problem. But this is where, when I look at a guy like Brian Schottenheimer, and again, I said I was going to say this every single show, so everyone understands what we're looking for me at least, this particular year. For the Dallas Cowboys this particular year, I want to see offensive consistency. And we saw bits of it in the Giants game. We saw adjustments where they understood that, hey, we're at this point in the game. We need to do these things to win. And we saw George Pickens get more targets, which is what we wanted to see. We saw them run the ball effectively in that game, which is great to see. I thought the play calling offensively was solid, and I think that defensively is, again, where most of my concerns go to. And a lot of those secondary concerns came down to the safety play, the pass rush being a bit weak. While we are getting pressures, we just aren't getting home. And so I kind of feel like, and to quote my guy 1980, he does mention that this is typically our preseason. For many teams as well, the first 3 weeks typically are a preseason period where a lot of these teams play sloppy football, or if they play good football, it's because the other team's playing sloppy. So you really don't know what you're getting. And especially when the league expands to 18 games in a season, it's going to be even more awkward, because now you might have just 2 preseason games, and now we're like, oh man, here we go. And but that's no excuse. I think at the end of the day, these are games that count now. You should be able to take care of business. Now, the Dallas Cowboys are trying to, because they've gone 1-1 now, so for the first, not for the first time, but they've been 1-1 since 2010. They're trying to go 2-1. I believe it was 20 out of the last 16 years that they've started 2-1, and half of those instances resulted in postseason appearances. So if we're going off of this, if the Cowboys do start 2-1, and I still believe this, I never said that the Cowboys weren't capable of being a playoff team. It's just a matter of how the NFC is really shaken up. And when we're kind of looking at an early go at this, I'm looking at the NFC right now. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 2-0 teams. That is for sure going to change as the year goes on, and you have one in your division. Now, as we look at this particular situation with the Cowboys and how things are developing, and okay, if they're going to get guys back, is it going to impact? Of course, it's going to impact how we play down the rest of the stretch of the season. But for what we're looking at right now, I'm looking at a team that clearly is still trying to find itself and develop something. And that's what's worrisome to me, because the other thing that was very worrisome to me, as a side tangent, because this was something that threw me off, was the Cowboys started off this week as a 1.5 point underdog to the Chicago Bears. And then what ended up happening was that that line changed to a 1.5 point favor for the Cowboys after hearing all these injury reports come out in Chicago. Now, I'm looking at this and I'm saying to myself, like, okay, looking at the betting odds, and we're going to talk about that right now. So, the Dallas Cowboys, as I mentioned, are a 1.5 point favorite. That has changed throughout the week. The over or under is 50.5. And we're looking at and the money line. I don't really care for the money line, but I did say last week that we should be looking to hit the over on that Giants game, which both teams pretty much covered it themselves, basically. And I did talk about how there was going to be a little bit more of a scoring affair, but not to the effect that I thought, which is pretty funny. But going back again to this particular game, the fact is would I take the over in this game? I'm going to say slam the under in this game, 50.5 points. I'm thinking this is going to be more of a like a 30-20 type of game. I'm not fully expecting it to be a shootout from last week. It's rare when we see that, and I'm not expecting that to happen again. I would be shocked if we see another shootout, to be honest with you. And then in terms of the spread, it's a 1.5 point spread. So I'm going to slam the Cowboys, obviously, to take the spread, because it's basically they just got to win by a field goal. And so there is that. But what I would say is that when we talk about like what can the Cowboys do to win this game, I think that the Chicago Bears defense is beat up to hell. I think that the Cowboys have a strong enough offense to get it done. Even if they do give up 30 points, I do think that the Cowboys could put up like 40. And it's any given Sunday, anything can happen. And so when we really look at this, I really think that the Dallas Cowboys are in a position where if you lose this game, now we're having concern. But I think they'll be just fine. I think that even if they win, and I want to be very clear, like I celebrate every win as a fan, but when we're talking about it objectively, you should win this game. If you're a good team, you take care of these bad teams, no matter where you're playing, you move on to the next week, and we just continue to go through. Because to me, the litmus test for this team is going to be against the Packers, whether it's 1-2 or 2-1. That's for me where I'm going to really figure out what kind of team this is. Because right now, as I'm looking back at my predictions, I have the Cowboys starting 2-2. And so if they do end up being in a position where they're 3-1, they're ahead of schedule with where I thought they would be as a team, and they're continuously putting together consistent showings of being able to run the football effectively, being able to have a pass offense that isn't putting so much stress on Dak Prescott to where you're basically making him have to play perfect football in order for you to win. That's what I need to see, is that this offense continues to make sure that it's giving easy buttons to Dak Prescott and it's able to run the ball with Javonte Williams, because I really like what we have there. And, do you re-sign Javonte Williams in the offseason? I think I need to see a little bit more. But the fact is that, he's off to a really good start here for the Cowboys, especially scoring a touchdown in every single game. And on top of that, I believe he's rushed for, I want to say 160 plus yards this particular season. And sorry, just getting that number for you. He's rushed for 151 yards on 33 attempts. So he's pretty much averaging around like 5 yards a carry, and he's had 3 total touchdowns. Now, for reference point, if he does score a touchdown, and I had to look this up because I thought this was weird. So if he does end up scoring a touchdown this week, I believe he's going to be the first Cowboys running back to have a touchdown every single week to start the year, which I thought was a bit perplexing. But I have to go double check that, because let me take a look here. Yeah, and he was very close to having a 100-yard game last week. But the key thing is, and I said this during the offseason and as we got into the season as well, is that if the Dallas Cowboys want to run the football, that's fine, but you got to do it effectively. And the fact is that we've seen Javonte Williams' numbers go up. He's really looking like the guy that was with the Denver Broncos before he got hurt, and he's a good running back. There's no question that, again, he reminds me a lot of Rico in the sense of he's a solid, good running back, but when he's healthy, right? Like he's usually hurt. But looking at this, I'm really happy to see what's going on with Javonte Williams, and he's making a case to where look, he's only 25 years old, and he's not going to turn 26 this year. So there's an option where, again, he's still a young guy. He's a 25-year-old that still has juice under him because he doesn't have as much mileage on his legs when we really think about it. Because when you look at his statistics, you know, yes, he's had 2 years where he's had 200 plus carries, but the main thing is that it shows that if he can remain healthy and he takes care of his body, he can be a bell cow for you, especially considering the fact that if you have these two young rookies coming, whether Blue ends up being on the field or because he's showing situations where off the field he's not, there's rumors going around where he doesn't have a good work ethic, hence why he's being healthy scratched. But then again, who knows? Or Phil Maffa, when Phil Maffa gets out there and into action, that can take less of a workload off of Javonte Williams so that can preserve him. So I'm not opposed to re-signing him if the price is right. But if we are in a situation where he has a career year, because he's never had a 1,000-yard season, I'm looking at his stats right now. He's had the most rushing touchdowns he's had in a season is 4, and he so far has 3 through 2 weeks. And I think that that's what's important is that he gets his confidence going, and I think he definitely has that swagger to him at the running back position where I'm going to be straight up when I've been watching how he runs the football, and he reminds me a lot, and maybe this is just me being crazy, but I did want to talk about this on the show, was he reminds me a lot of DeMarco Murray with how he runs. He has a bit of a burst to him, but he's a hard physical runner that isn't afraid to make contact. He reminds me a lot of DeMarco, and I think that that's something that if there's a running back or a caliber of running back that you need, and I'm not talking about like offensive player of the year DeMarco Murray, even though that's great. I'm talking about like that early years DeMarco Murray. Like that's the kind of running back that you want, especially with this offensive line. Have that kind of bell cow dude, and then if you want to have another guy as the Lightning to Javonte Williams Thunder, that's where you're hoping Javonte Blue comes in, or Javonte Blue, Jadon Blue. It's for Javonte Williams. Now, the other thing is there are rumors, and I'm looking at the last article that we're going to talk about here today, is the Brandon Aubrey situation and if he's going to get a contract. And I do think that we will probably see Brandon Aubrey get a contract. Now, he is a restricted free agent, so it's not like he's going to hit unrestricted free agency. And we talked about this actually. If you haven't done so already, you can go check out the early free agency preview for the Dallas Cowboys. The video I did, I want to say 2 weeks ago now. And we talked about it. Like Brandon Aubrey is a restricted free agent. So in order for any team to get him, obviously they would have to offer him a contract, but then they would have to give up a first or second round pick, which I wouldn't be shocked if the Cowboys gave him a first round tender for him, because I don't see anybody giving up a first round pick for Brandon Aubrey, but who knows? But I think that we won't even get to that point. I think the Cowboys will give him a nice contract extension where he will be just fine, because you're going to need a guy like him. The fact is that he is a weapon. He is this is where having a guy like Brandon Aubrey changes the way how you manage the game and how dangerous the Cowboys are. And we saw this. Like, we were in a situation where we were down 3 points, needed to get a field goal to tie the game up with 25 seconds to go. You can even say like 19 seconds to go. And the fact is you were able to get a 64-yard field goal off of just one play. Like, the fact that you just need one play, get to midfield, and you have a chance with Brandon Aubrey, which he more than likely will hit it, knowing the statistics and how he's done, that is scary. Like, so you have to think because that changes how you as an opponent handle the Cowboys. Like, okay, you know what? We don't want to give the Cowboys a chance to get to midfield for a shot at a field goal. Now, granted, for the Giants, playing prevent in that situation was a bit peculiar, but I digress. But again, I think that getting Brandon Aubrey done would be huge because then your special teams unit's more or less taken care of. You have your returner, you have your kicker, the punter set, and really, again, offensively, you just got to take care of the two players, maybe if you want to, and then defensively, you can just revamp this whole thing. But I was gonna say, just double checking. Okay, so yeah, that was one of the last topics, and I was looking at the stats for the season so far. I just wanted to see, who the NFL leaders are in statistics because I was really curious to see where our dudes are lining up because I like seeing this. When we talk about the sorry, give me 1 second. It's just being a pain in the ass when we're pulling this up. So I appreciate your patience here. And so when we talk about how Dak Prescott's measuring up to everybody else, now granted, we did have Josh Allen play a game, so of course he has 3. So did Tua. Dak Prescott, 459 passing yards. He's completed 68.6% of his passes, 2 touchdowns and interception. If you want to actually, this is what's crazy, is that Dak Prescott is actually statistically on pace to have a better year than he had his MVP level season in 2023. So that's impressive. When it comes to rushing the football, the Dallas Cowboys actually have a guy that is in the top 7. Javonte Williams is a yard behind Tony Pollard. And what's interesting is that Javonte Williams is actually tied for the second most rushing touchdowns this year. And if we're talking about just the running back position, because you have Daniel Jones and Jalen Hurts both with 3 touchdowns each, he's really just behind James Cook, who played an extra game. So I'm really liking what I'm seeing from this. And then in the receiving game, I believe CeeDee Lamb was 3rd. Yeah, so CeeDee Lamb is 3rd in the entire National Football League with receiving yards. He's still yet to score a touchdown yet this year, and he has the 4th most receptions in the league. So that is something where offensively they're doing their thing, but defensively, if you really want to be a smart ass, we could talk about how Kenny Clark has the same amount of sacks as Micah Parsons. But I wanted to close out on that to kind of just see where we're at. So let's talk about bold predictions, and then we'll close out the show. So starting things off with our bold predictions, I think that for the Dallas Cowboys, when we talk about what they'll do offensively, I think that my first bold prediction is we're going to have a 100-yard rusher this game. I think this will be the first game where we see Javonte Williams get over 100 rushing yards. And I believe the other thing that I want to talk about is in the passing game, I think that this is going to be a game where Dak Prescott, I'm going to say he's going to throw 3 touchdowns, and CeeDee Lamb will get his first touchdown this week. So I think we'll get a total of 4 touchdowns this particular game. Defensively, I think defensively the Cowboys I think they're going to get 2 turnovers in this game. I think they'll get 2 turnovers and they'll hold the Bears under 20 points. I think that is my bold prediction, which is kind of sad. But again, I'm not saying that the Bears are a terrible team. But again, if they are a team who we think they are, which is a team that's not there yet, and we're seeing how many dudes are getting hurt, you should be able to go ahead and take care of business. So those are my bold predictions for this week, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this iteration of the Space Cowboy Show. If you have done so, please make sure to follow or subscribe. Hit the like button. If you want to support the channel further, you're more than happy to do so by becoming a channel member or super chatting, whatever you wish to do. And I will see you guys after the game on Sunday. All right, guys, have a good one. Goodbye.